So the first person for today is Graeme. Graeme is a multidisciplinary game developer and a longtime jam enthusiast. He builds playful VR experiences as the gameplay director for Owlchemy Labs. As an independent developer, he's assembled dozens of small titles in varying genres and styles, and he loves using games as a way to create and explore new worlds. So, with that, I will let you take it away, Graeme.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Dan. Yeah, this should be kind of a quick talk, probably around 15 minutes if my estimate is right. But yeah, let's get started. So today I'm going to basically talk through some ideas about game development as they relate to my experience gardening for something a bit different. I think it's super important to have hobbies outside of game development to give us like just perspective. There's a lot we can learn from the world around us if we pay attention to it, and I think the garden is particularly rich in insights about like creating things. So while I will make some direct comparisons to game development and what I talk about, my intention is also to just talk about gardening in like a way that's a bit evocative of the game dev experience. Because my real hope for this talk is to just like motivate you to look for inspiration and ideas like this in your own hobbies and daily life, where especially in places where they might not be an obvious connection at first. So, getting started. This is my third summer of actually attempting to grow like a real garden, and at this point, my entire backyard is taken over by a bunch of ground beds, three big raised beds, and a few kind of like larger support structures. And as of this year, there's actually no grass left in the yard at all. It's become kind of a lot, and it's pretty time consuming to maintain and manage, but I do really enjoy it, and I think it's worth it. I enjoy, adding on to what's there and having excuses to build things and problems to solve. But of course, it didn't start out at scale. For my first year, I set a goal of just really wanting any garden space that I put in to be more productive and interesting than the grass it was replacing, which is a pretty low bar. But I was naturally, because of that, like most interested in growing food. Understanding why you're growing something fundamentally changes how you build out the space, just as in games, having a clear picture of, the reason you're making the game will help you steer the project and make decisions. You need a direction to compare things against and to like actually have a rubric when you're making decisions. So for example, like choosing a plant from a list of everything you could theoretically grow at all is very difficult. But looking up, high yield vegetables that are going to do well in our climate is a much more specific and actionable task that is only possible if you know that that's what you're trying to do. Like a game, the garden is kind of just one big system, and it is going to expand a little bit unpredictably. Your goal helps determine which parts you're going to embrace and emphasize, and which parts you will prune out. And within that giant system, there are going to be specific results that you want to achieve, but also think about like what processes you're interested in performing. Um, for example, this is a squash flower. I think they look really cool. I enjoy seeing them, just develop and bloom and watching the bees dig around inside them. They grow on these huge vines, and I enjoy the process of like routing those vines around and planting paths for them. And I do like getting the squash at the end, but I grow it because I also enjoy seeing it develop all the way through from start to finish, and that keeps me motivated to care for it. Uh, Development takes a lot of time and effort, and not all parts of the process are fun. That's just inevitable, but identifying parts of it that you enjoy or are just interested in can help you avoid fixating only on the end result, which can kind of be demotivating sometimes. Don't be afraid to break things and mess with the way things are in order to move forward. Um, for a long time, I didn't realize that these little like support tendril things could be broken without really hurting the plant. It doesn't really affect it to snap these, and it's totally worth doing so to reposition the vine and like set it on a good trajectory so that it's going to grow somewhere where it succeeds. Now that I understand how these tendrils work and I'm not scared about snapping them, I refactor my vines quite often, and I find it just as satisfying as any code refactor I've done in a game. Letting a system evolve and interact with itself can be extremely rewarding, and can also lead to a lot of like useful unexpected discoveries. If you've done game jams before, maybe you've experienced this feeling where you get like a project started, it gets some momentum, and things kind of like start taking on a life of their own. Different parts of the game, harmonize or play off each other really well. And it kind of feels like the game itself is helping you push it forward. And there's a sense that like there's something that wants to be created there. This feeling for me is clear in the garden as well, where you have different species that can interact very differently depending on the subtleties of like where they're planted, and they all interact and do unexpected things together. And your role can easily become more about like helping those interactions along and paying attention to how things are developing to make the most of what's already happening and kind of what wants to happen. But how do you get started? How do you get from nothing to something? There's only one real answer, right? You get seeds in the ground, you see what happens, and you iterate. The garden you plant this year will teach you things about how you can make the one next year better. And those will generally be things that you wouldn't have known to question or to look up ahead of time. You can keep your body of knowledge moving forward by, like watching for what the garden needs, not just on paper, but like based on how things are actually playing out in your specific situation. But you can start so simply, and you kind of must start so simply, just by getting something in the ground at all. Nothing is ever done in that world of iteration. I think a completed, growing season or game is successful if it allows you to start your next one with a bit more knowledge than you had before. Seeds are never guaranteed to germinate. You just have to plant enough to, offset the chance of them not starting successfully. You have to be able to accept the fact that no matter how carefully you plan and how perfect your idea is, it might just not work in practice. Not every project takes off for a million reasons, and the only surefire way to offset that is to make more stuff and plant enough that something will eventually grow. And failures definitely are not always a waste of time. Even garbage can be productive in the right situations. This is the bottom part of, just a head of lettuce from the grocery store. It still had some roots attached, and, you can see new leaves already beginning to grow here. I used to throw these parts out, but now I just put them in the dirt, and if they survive that transplanting, I can usually get at least 1 or 2 more batches out of them. You can regrow green onions kind of like this too. There's a lot of stuff like that. So even out of waste, good things can emerge. And yeah, when something isn't successful, you're probably at least still learning something. Like that's something that can come out of it no matter what. And there's always ways to find something to appreciate along the way. These zucchini are way too like densely clustered together. It's not really supposed to be like this, but I just enjoy the way the light comes through them and seeing the growth that they have over the course of their life. So it's okay to me if a lot of them don't end up creating actual zucchini in the end. I will most likely get some, but for the rest of it, I'm just there to enjoy the process and enjoy seeing it. Sometimes when things don't go the way you'd expect, you can adapt. I keep a ton of these sticks from the dollar store. Keep those around so I can be responsive and put them into the dirt wherever a new vine splits, so that it has something to latch onto and grow along. If I tried to place all these sticks up front according to where everything was supposed to grow, I would inevitably miss a bunch of spots where they ended up being needed because I just wouldn't be able to predict exactly what was going to happen. You can prepare ahead of time too, but remember that you're making something dynamic. Even if you've grown it before or developed a game like that before, there will always be differences, right? The weather isn't going to be exactly the same. The world has changed. Every year, every project is new, and your prepared infrastructure might not be perfectly adapted. It probably isn't. Just as with games, nothing is 100% predictable from the outside. Sometimes the plants themselves can take the role of that infrastructure. Corn pretty quickly becomes a structure in itself, and it can support other crops like beans growing up along the stalk, and they kind of work together. So think like in your game, which parts of it form that backbone or that infrastructure that can actually support other things? Like what do you need to plant first and give a bit of a head start to make it stable and start growing so that other parts can have something to latch onto? Even if you can't predict like exactly how everything is going to grow, you can plan for that kind of strategy when you're sowing things. It's definitely really satisfying to set up a plant to serve multiple purposes like that. Nature is great at finding ways to repurpose things too, and not always in the way you'd expect or even want. I built this wooden archway thing to, support plants, as you might expect. But after getting it outside, I quickly realized that birds are going to use it as a perch because, of course, they are. And suddenly I had a bunch of new bird poop danger zones. So, like, was I wrong to create that problem by building this thing that I didn't actually need to build? I mean, not like whatever, right? If we avoided doing anything that could potentially create a setback, we'd never do anything interesting. So that's just the situation I found myself in, and it kind of goes into this pile of dynamic stuff that I'm dealing with, right? I didn't get into gardening because I'm interested in bird management, but because that need evolved naturally out of what I was already doing, I have context and motivation to learn about it for a reason that matters to me. So, moral of the story, just understanding how to combine what you need to do with what you want to do, I think is essential in any creative project. Surprise guests just make life more interesting a lot of the time. Like if I'm growing this parsley to eat, does it matter if this guy is living in there in the meantime? At first I was worried that a lot of this stuff was going to end up getting eaten, but it ended up completely not mattering. Like I couldn't even tell the difference. I'm sure it ate some, but like I couldn't perceive the damage. Um, so don't let your pursuit of your exact vision of how you want everything to be prevent you from embracing incidental chaotic things that happen along the way. In game terms, let your players be free where it makes sense. If they find a way into the parsley and they have fun roaming around in there, let them have fun, right? If they find a way to break your game that's entertaining, even if you don't want it to be that way, at least look at what it's telling you about what you've made. Chaos and unexpected results are part of the value that the system enabling them provides. Um, in my case here, I just got to like look at a cool caterpillar once in a while and take a couple pictures, but that has some value. That had value to me. So yeah, next time something unexpected happens, say in a playtest, rather than automatically resisting it because you didn't expect it, take a moment to look and figure out what's really going on and if there might be some value in it. Another quick story of a unexpected interaction between systems. These bean sprout seedling things were getting pulled out of the ground and uprooted just as they were beginning to sprout, which was pretty frustrating. And I didn't really understand why that was happening. Like whatever animal was doing it wasn't eating them; it was just digging them up and leaving them there, which seemed kind of wasteful and unfortunate, right? Um, but after some time, I realized this would happen after it rained. And I'm pretty sure what was happening is the birds would come out looking for worms that had emerged, post rainfall. And quite reasonably for a bird, they went for these little bendy things popping out of the dirt. They would grab them, and when they realized it wasn't actually a worm, they'd leave it on the ground. And you can't really blame them for that, right? I don't know if that theory is correct, but it makes sense to me based on what I saw happening. Anyway, just like those birds, players are going to do what they think is best with the information they have. And importantly, what they're already expecting to be able to do is going to have a huge impact on what they try to do. So I take photos in the garden fairly often and have kind of come to think of that as part of my harvest. If I grow a plant and it never actually bears anything, but I get one nice picture out of the whole thing, that's still like successful in a way to me. Not everything is going to work, but if you're flexible, you can find a way to get value out of just about everything in some way, even if you're resorting to just the aesthetic quality of it or whatever. And spending time just observing helps you appreciate little details more too. This is a like close-up of a zucchini stem, which has these really tiny little spikes on them that honestly you can barely see them unless you're looking really close or you zoom in. But they can actually like hurt if you grab the stem inattentively or you're just like not expecting it. By looking at it, you probably wouldn't think that there's much danger or risk or anything here, if any at all. But by actually trying it out, you realize that, yeah, you have to watch out for these guys. Conversely, cucumber vines look like this. They look like they're absolutely covered in spikes at a glance, but in reality, it's pretty much harmless to touch. When you do touch it or look more closely or zoom in, you eventually realize it's more like a fuzz texture, and it kind of just helps the vine adhere to stuff as it grows, which makes sense. It looks much gnarlier than a zucchini stem, but it's much friendlier. So the point is make it and see for yourself. There's so many things that you'd never know from a mock-up or a pitch. or even like the beginnings of a prototype, right? Until you actually try it out and see it through. The way things look at a glance often isn't the whole story about how they work. So observe, but also test. Whether it's by skill or luck, you may end up with an overabundance. You can't really know which part of your project is going to go well, so it's important to pay attention to what is succeeding and lean into it. For me this year, it was lettuce. I had to eat so much and like pick faster and faster just to make sure it wasn't getting like too overcrowded. And I did share a lot of it, but I also took the opportunity to like eat as much of it as I possibly could myself. So I ended up like trying different kinds of salads and getting different dressings that I wouldn't normally have gotten just by necessity. So now I know a little bit more about what I like and a little bit more about salads and stuff. I never would have like listed that as a specific gardening goal at the beginning of the year, but I think tiny little insights like that can really add up and make it feel that much more worthwhile to be working on this bigger thing if you're getting all these little things out of it along the way that you kind of didn't plan. And I think abundance is meant to be shared. Since I just love growing lots of stuff, I inevitably end up with way more than I can eat myself, and the joy of sharing it is certainly another intangible byproduct. Gifted food is usually perceived as more valuable, sort of, than purchased food, and cooking with a homegrown ingredient just generally tends to make things taste better, whether that's for actual chemical reasons or just the placebo effect. I think if you grew or developed something personally, that automatically makes it valuable and special. There's so much to do and learn and create that it can be hard to figure out what to focus on, but finding that focus as you go can be very rewarding. There's so much value in discovering what interests you, spending time with those interests, and sharing what you create with others. Nobody has all the answers about how to do that. I think we're all on a journey to figure out how to do that in our own way. So along the way, I've been showing you pictures that I think make my garden look good because that's how I want it to be perceived. It certainly doesn't look good from every angle. You know, plenty of parts are gross and there's decomposing stuff and there's bird poop, as we talked about. There's weeds absolutely everywhere most of the time. But it also is beautiful. And the only way you'd get the full picture is by being there yourself. So it goes to show, like, don't judge things that you make privately based on what others post or are showing publicly. There's always more under the surface. There's always a way to make something look good or bad, or to stretch the truth in any number of directions. For me, there's inspiration in the garden because that's where I spend time. Everything we do is full of insight, and that insight is most powerful to use in your development when it's gleaned from a source that you're passionate about or that's like a big part of your life. Sometimes in the past, I've felt like I'm not a real legit gardener because I don't do it the way you're supposed to by the book, and I care more about just watching stuff happen, watching things grow, taking pictures, and generally having fun with organic systems than I do about maximizing results for each plant or like doing it the way you're supposed to. But if you're gardening, you are a gardener, whether it's one plant or 1,000. And I think if you are making games, participating in that process, you are a developer, no matter the scale or how you do it. You're doing it the way that you would do it, and that's something nobody else can do. So yeah, kind of in closing, remember to be appreciative of what's growing in the garden of your game. Help it along, support it, make it yours, learn from it, and share what you can from all of the above. As with anything we create, we are never 100% in control, but that's part of the fun. So thanks. I hope that was interesting. It's just as a different way to look at game development process a little bit. And yeah, good luck with all your projects. I'm excited for our collective digital harvest time at the end of the month. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, that was so lovely. I have a question.
Sure, yeah, we need questions.
I had a number of questions. One of my first questions was, how much effort is it for you to do all this work versus the output that you get from it? I understand, like, it's not just about that, but I'm just kind of curious how much, like, zucchinis you get for the amount of time you spend, or effort. Maybe effort is the bigger factor than time. But.
Yeah. if you were doing it purely to min-max food, I think it's like, it is better than getting everything at the grocery store. Like, I don't know, I probably spend, if you average it out, like an hour a day doing something or other out there. Um, and I mean, I don't have figures in my stat sheet for this year yet, but like last year I grew just over 90 kilograms of food ish, of like all different kinds. So it's certainly like you can offset the cost of all the water you're using and stuff like that, plus a bit. So it is like worth it as opposed to buying food technically. But yeah, it becomes really worth it once you add in the like fun of doing it, right? Because it's also just like chill and prevents you from driving to the grocery store as often and stuff like that.
And then,
so yeah, hard to quantify.
And then, and I apologize if you touched on this at the beginning. What was the impetus for you getting into this endeavor, I guess?
Because I had grass and I kept looking at grass and thinking, man, it's weird that that grass is out there and it just doesn't do anything. And sometimes I have to mow it, and you know, like that could be anything. That could be something else. So yeah, just a practical, like I would love to, I haven't done anything with my front yard yet, but that's, you know, next on the list of figuring out what to do there. That's not just like a chore, right?
Would you use your front yard as a garden too, or is that like more of like a backyard type of thing?
I think it's easier to get away with it in the backyard for sure, because no one's like paying attention to what you're doing for the most part.
I love when I see gardens in front yards, because it's not something you traditionally see, but I think it's like all these images are really nice. They're really high quality too. So I think that's nice when like people could, you know, drive by and appreciate without having to like hop over your fence or like, you know, climb over and take a peek or whatever. Not that, you know, it's, but
I feel like there's another comparison in there somewhere of like the backyard being like the indie game project where like you can do whatever you want in the backyard. It's indie, it's scrappy, go crazy, do whatever your heart desires, because no one's gonna like, the audience is smaller, right? And then in the front yard it's like, well, everyone's driving by on the street, so that's your professional job. Like if you're gonna do game dev in the front, you got to do it the professional way, you know.
And what's your favorite thing to grow and your least favorite?
Least favorite? Can't do that. I don't know. Zucchini. I feel like I'm known for zucchinis at this point, because I get to this point in the year and like every time I see a friend, I'm like trying to give them a zucchini. So that's like my brand at this point, and I get a million of them.
Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. Not least favorite, but the one that like presents the most sort of obstacles. And I guess
you know what? Yeah. Well, and the most obstacles is spinach. I don't know if anyone's tried to grow spinach. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but like I get good spinach for like 2 days out of a plant, and then it just goes like ballistic with growing and like producing seeds and everything, and it like bolts and goes crazy. There's like this tiny window where it's like actually making spinach, and then it just goes nuts, and like you gotta start over kind of. I still haven't gotten that right. I've tried every year. I can't figure it out, so working on that. But yeah, spinach is my nemesis.
Cool. Well, other people are welcome to ask questions if they want, but I was just particularly interested, so I had a few questions of my own. Okay, cool. So thank you, Graeme. That was it was really cool. It's nice to recognize that there are more things than game design, even if that's the thing that you focus on. I mean, not you particular, just everyone. So it's really cool to see that kind of perspective on it. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me.